Okay, so I'm going to show you how I did a spawner for my Unity game in 3D. So first of all, we'll hit play so you can see it running. So right there where the two balls are kind of popping out, that is where the spawner game object is, and you can see they will just keep coming out. Yeah, so that's it in motion. So this is the spawn and game object that I created. It is an empty object that I moved into position that you can see right here. It has the script attached for the spawner. And in this part right here, I have it assigning the blue sphere as a blue prefab and the red sphere as the red prefab. For creating the prefabs themselves, it's pretty basic. You can just essentially drag and drop any item from here down into a folder, and that will automatically create a prefab. As you can see here, I already did that before, but this is now the ramp 1 prefab. And what that does is that saves all of the changes that you made to the object. So for example, the red sphere prefab, which you can see is a prefab because right here it is that light blue colored in color. I have the rigid body added to it. I have the red sphere script added to it. I have the red material as well as the kind of bouncy physics material all added. So if I was to drag and drop another sphere from the prefab, it's going to have the same exact physical properties that I gave the first one. So whenever it's spawning with all of these properties already attached to it. That's why it's helpful to do it as a prefab. It's a very quick way of doing it. Let me just unpack this prefab. So if you want something to not be a prefab, hit unpack, and then you're able to delete these without causing issues. If you were to delete this before unpacking it, you'll just get a little red warning here, and then you can unpack it. It's not that challenging. I'm not going to be using that prefab, so I'm going to be having it deleted off for organization purposes. So let me go into my spawner script. Okay, so I got the majority of the script from Jason Wyman. Videos linked down below. Does a lot of different Unity videos, really great guides. Yeah, so you have there's a few different variables. The first one is the spawn time. Because you are not setting it to anything, it automatically sets it to 0. That's how C# does it. It will automatically set things without you having to initialize the value. The serialized field is the game object blue prefab, game object red prefab. You could see that's just where you drag and drop the prefabs in. Super easy. Spawn delay is how much time between spawns is occurring. In this case, it's 0.2f. F just being the fact that it's a float. That's how you initialize floats. You have to have f right there. 0.2, which means that's how often it's being spawned in number of seconds. So for this would be 0.2 of a second. So that means there's going to be, if you were to be spawning one game object every 0.2 seconds, that would be 5 game objects in a second. So you'll see a couple of functions here on the update. If should spawn returns true, it's going to spawn, right? Pretty basic. So the should spawn function is right here. It is a private Boolean function. It looks at time.time, so whatever the current time is in the game. And if it's greater than 30, it returns false. So essentially this stops the spawner after about 30 seconds. If I was to be doing this game for real, I would be deleting this code. The point of this code is just to let me test the game a little bit easier. If time.time is greater than the spawn time, you're going to return true. And I'll go over the spawn time a little bit down there. So as soon as this returns true, if should spawn returns true, it's going to run this function right here. This function is pretty simple. It's the spawn function. It's going to say spawn time is equal to time.time plus the spawn delay. So what this does is keep it current with whatever the current time is and adds in the spawn delay. and this allows you to space out how often something is spawning. And then it instantiates the blue prefab, and as well as the red prefab. And the location it is going to instantiate them from is the transform.position of the spawner game object, and then the transform.rotation of the spawner game object. If I go back here to the spawner game object, you can see that the position is right here, so that's exactly where those items are coming out, and it's rotating 0, 0, 0. If you watched earlier, you'll notice that the two balls actually separate a little bit, because essentially it's trying to spawn them both in the same place at the same time, because that's how fast the code itself is running. It's not actually going to instantiate the blue and then the red. It's essentially doing it simultaneously. So you'll notice, let's go back and play it really quick again, that they actually kind of pop out. You see how it's kind of doing the weird thing where they pop out a little bit? Because the physics engine isn't going to let those two things occupy the same space, because they both have rigid bodies, so that's physically impossible for it to go through, so it just kind of pops them out. Works fine for the game, so that's why I didn't change the position or the rotation. I played a little bit with trying to do a lot at once. Bad idea, but yeah, so that's how I created a spawner for my game.